elected. There are a range of parties that have more developed policies on the NHS, but in many cases you can't vote for them because they're not standing in your area. National Action Party, Green Party to some extent, and Scottish National Party, interestingly, supporting the NHS reinstatement bill, and their MPs are supporting that. So anybody who gets a vote in Scotland, you can play a role there. And actually maybe SNP could be a way of keeping Labour honest on some of its commitments against privatisation of the NHS and other issues. But, I mean, in many cases, people have to vote Labour to get rid of the Tories, and in many cases, they will do so with some reservations, and I understand those reservations, and I think the reality is, do not trust them, keep up the fight, because we will have to fight, as we had to fight under the last Labour government against privatisation, and we will have to continue to do that, and even if we take all their pledges at face value, we'll have to keep up the pressure to make sure that they are the ones that dominate, as opposed to the Ed Balls camp and so on, which want a full-scale austerity agenda and don't want to do any of this extra spending that's been promised. So I think this is really important. So, the other big thing that came in towards the end was the mention of clinical commissioning groups. These were invented by the Health and Social Care Act, and they are proved to be absolutely in the line. And almost there are 2 or 3 meritorious exceptions I've heard of. Generally across the country, CCGs are a disaster. They're undemocratic. From local communities, but they don't even take any notice of their own GPs. As far as I'm aware, there's only one instance of a ballot of GPs being held on a controversial policy, and it overwhelmingly overthrew the policy that the chair had signed up for, and which would involve the closure of hospitals in southwest London. So I do think it's important to, where these controversial policies are coming forward, we should be demanding a ballot of GPs by the CCGs to determine whether or not they really support them. We should be actually doing that to drive a wedge, because in many cases, if you look at that Staffordshire cancer care proposal, less than 20 GPs across the 4 CCGs are involved in the boards that are driving that policy. There's been no ballot of GPs, there's no evidence GPs support it. There's plenty of evidence local people oppose it. It's been one of the biggest series of meetings that I've ever seen against privatisation, turning out in the one I spoke at in Stoke-on-Trent. It was an absolutely massive meeting and really impressive. The local community don't want it, but I think there's a fair chance that the local GPs don't want it either. Let's get a poll of those GPs and let's find out what they say. And wherever they're driving hospital closures, let's get those GPs to have a say. And just the other point on South West London was mentioned. Don't forget, when people start talking about a hospital being safe, the CCGs are hatching up plans that they haven't yet publicised right across the country for absolutely massive cuts in the next 5 years. Absolutely massive. In the East Midlands, West Midlands, Eastern region, we're talking billions in terms of cuts that are coming across the CCGs. In Lincolnshire, they want to go down to 1 A&E for the whole of Lincolnshire. If anybody's ever been there, you know what that means. 1 A&E covering the whole of a massive county with rotten roads. 1 A&E. But in Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire, Derbyshire, all across the East Midlands, they're lining up massive cuts. In London, the cuts total comes to something like 3 billion. In South West London, 500 million. North West London, 1 billion. North Central London's got their own plans. North East London, massive cuts. Most of them to land on the hospital trusts. Most of those so-called efficiency savings being demanded. Barts alone got an efficiency target of over £300 million over the next 5 years, on top of the problems they've already got. So these are being driven by CCGs. And we need to be aware, these are the threats coming down the line. No hospital is safe. No service is safe until these plans are discarded. And we actually need a new government, whoever it is, to come in and tell these CCGs, well, scrap the CCGs. As part of the state of the NHS. Let's pull it all back together again. We want our NHS back. Let's keep our NHS back.